You should have out your grading utensils. Should have gotten this warm-up complete. So in the first one, our new function h of x will be adding f of x and g of x together. F of x is your negative 4x plus 1. G of x is 3x. So we're simply combining like terms. We have negative 4x plus 3x, which is negative 1x, or just negative x plus 1. So h of x equals negative x plus 1. Moving over to number 2, this time instead of adding them, we're subtracting them. Remember, with subtraction, that does mean we need to put parentheses around the second part. So f of x is again negative 4x plus 1 minus g of x, which is 3x. So I have negative 4x minus 3x, so that's going to make negative 7x this time. Nothing to add to the 1 or to subtract to it, so plus 1. So j of x equals negative 7x plus 1. Here is your homework from last night. It's the guided practice 1 through 4, and then the independent practice starting with question number 8. So look through here, check your answers, adding, subtracting, make sure you're distributing the negative, multiplying, make sure you multiply whatever number is the constant. Scrolling it up. Eight, 9, and 10, you are adding the functions together to combine to get h of x. Again, moving up. 11, 12, and 13, you are subtracting. Subtracting can be the harder one of the two. Make sure you're distributing for all of them with the negative. And then 14, 15, and 16, you are multiplying. On number 16, you're multiplying by a third. The nice thing is they gave you numbers that were actually divisible by 3. So a third of 9x is 3x, and a third of 6 is the minus 2. We're covering part 2 of 7-2. We're still going to be adding, subtracting, and multiplying linear functions, but now we're first going to have to write them. So we have our taxi company, who charges, the friendly one charges $5 plus $1.35 per mile. So it's step 1. We write the equation for f of x, the first one. Step 2, she takes the other taxi company to go home, who charged $2 plus $1.85 per mile. And we want to know find the total that she spends on cab rides. Well, total means you're going to be adding, so they're writing it as t of x, the total, and adding f of x together with g of x. So we have f of x, which is the 5 plus $1.35x, added to g of x, 2 plus $1.85x. So we combine our like terms. They're putting the x's together and then the constants or the numbers together. 1.35 and 1.85 ends up being 3.2x. And then 5 plus 2, we should all know, is of course 7. So the total for her ride to work and her ride from work is 3.2 times x plus 7. Now the question is, what if instead of using 2 different taxi companies, she uses the friendly taxi? So go ahead and decide what you would change in order for that to happen. We're going to actually go ahead and work out the problem. If she's taking the friendly taxi company back and forth, then we know that T of X would equal 2 times your 5 plus $1.35 per mile. You also could have written 5 plus $1.35x plus 5 plus $1.35x. So we're going to distribute, since we're multiplying by a 2. So it would be $10 plus $2.70 per mile would be your total of X. So she would have more of a flat fee, $10 versus the 7 when she took both, but she is paying less per mile. So it's going to depend on how many miles she lives from work, which option would be a better fit. For number 9, we have a tennis club who's formed for boys and girls, and in the first year 4 boys and 5 girls join, and then each year after 2 boys and 1 girl join. And we want to know the total number of years since the club was, or T is the number of years, and we want to find a rule for the function f of T, the number of club members total. Well, if you have 4 boys and 5 girls that started by joining the club, that means if you add them together, there were 9 members that first year. So we know we're starting with 9. And then if we look at the problem, it says 2 more boys and 1 more girl join every year. Well, 2 and 1, that makes 3 new members each year. So each year, which is T, we're adding 3. And there is your function of T. I know it seems like it would be harder since they separated labeling the boys and the girls, but the club, we're just looking for a total number of members, so we can just combine those numbers. Looking on the next page at example 4, not only do we sometimes add and subtract functions, but we also multiply. So this time we have a phone company, just one, that's charging $20 a month. So there's your flat fee plus 5 cents per every minute. And they're saying to represent T for minutes. I know we would normally write M. And then we have tax, which is added to the total charge, which is at 8%. So here's the total charge just based off of the service and the minutes. So if we have to combine the tax with it, to find tax, you're multiplying. So we're going to take f of T times g of T, the sales tax, which means we're going to be distributing 0.08. So if we distribute 0.08 to the 20, which is your flat fee, that means you're paying 1.6, and then 0.08 to the 0.05T means you're now paying 0.004 for every minute for tax. And again, that's just your amount of tax. That's not your total bill, that's just the amount of tax that you're paying. So in number 10, they want you to interpret the number 1.6, what that number refers to. So take a moment, figure out in your groups what that number does happen to refer to. $1.6 is the amount of tax on the $20 flat fee. $20 is going to reoccur every month, which means every month you'd also be paying $1.60 in tax on that $20. Now we have another problem to try together, and then there's a couple more that you're also going to be trying to write here. So we have Sunshine Coffee Shop, who has 8 employees working, and while they're working, they each buy a large coffee. It's not provided for them, they do have to buy it. And then they also sell X large coffees to customers, and each coffee costs $1.75. So our goal is to write a function, C of X, to represent the amount of money the coffee shop makes selling these large coffees. So in your groups, see if you can figure out how to start the equation, and then we'll finish it together if need be. We know that our large coffee is equal to $1.75 for every one they sell. Well, they're selling it to their customers, and they're also selling it to their 8 employees. Well, we are not aware of how many customers come throughout the day, and I'm sure that's a number that would vary. So that's why they say to call that X. We do know for sure that every morning they're guaranteed 8 sales from their employees, and they're charging the customers, which we don't know how many, and the 8 employees $1.75, which is our C of X. Well, we could go ahead and simplify this and distribute that 1.75. So the final function would be C of X equals 1.75x plus 1.75 times 8, which is 14. We have a company who manufactures and sells slippers. It charges their wholesale customers $18 per pair, so that's money that they make. They also have a fixed annual cost of $30,000. Annual means yearly, so every year, in order for their company to sell the slippers, they have a $30,000 fixed cost. And in addition, it costs the company $4.50 to make each pair of slippers. Well, revenue is money that they get from selling. So that's going to refer to the $18 per pair. So we know that R of X is equal to $18 for every pair of slippers. That's not profit, that is just revenue. So that's when they sell them, they get that money back from the wholesalers. Question 8 wants us to write the cost function. And again, X is the number of slippers a year, and C is the annual cost for the company. Well, the cost is that for every pair of slippers, they have to spend $4.50. But that's not the only cost that they have to spend every year. Every year they also have an additional $30,000 in costs. So this is how much it costs them to operate on a yearly basis, depending on X, the number of slippers they're going to sell. Number 9 tells us that profit is the difference between revenue and cost, and we're going to call that P of X. So take a moment and write your profit statement. So our profit statement would be your 18x minus, and since it's a difference minus, we're going to put it in parentheses, the $4.50 of each slipper and the $30,000 of annual costs to run the company. So let's go ahead and simplify this. Keep in mind we got that minus, so we're going to be distributing a negative. So I have 18x minus $4.50 minus 30,000. Well, oops, forgot the x there. 18x minus 450x, those are like terms, so we can go ahead and combine them. So our final profit statement would be $13.50 for every slipper, and now minus the $30,000 of annual costs. Question 10 and 11 are telling us in a year what happened in 2010 and then in 2012. So go ahead and find out if they made a profit or a loss in each of these years. In 2010, they're telling us that they sold 2,000 pairs. So that means we'd be replacing X with 2,000. So P of 2,000 is equal to $13.50 times that 2,000. And then we have to subtract the 30,000 in annual costs. So if you multiply the $13.50 times your 2,000, that means that on the slippers they made a profit of, well, they earned $27,000. However, their annual costs were more than that, which means they didn't have a profit in 2010. They had a loss of 3,000. Or you could say that P of 2,000 is equal to negative 3,000. Well, in 2012, they increased their sales by quite a bit, and this time they sold 15,000 pairs. Well, hopefully you know if 2,000 gave them a loss of 3,000, 15,000 should definitely put them as a profit. So we would write P of 15,000 equals $13.50 times the 15,000 slippers, and then subtract the $30,000 of annual costs for that year. So we multiply 13.5 times 15,000. So they made revenue, because that's the amount people bought, of $202,500. That's definitely over than 30,000, so they're at a profit for 2012. In fact, their profit this year was $172,500. Going from 11 to 12, they're now saying that instead of the slippers costing $450, it now costs them $525. In order to account for them, they're going to up the price of the slippers by $1, and they want you to write the new profit function. So keep in mind that's going to affect both the R of X, your revenue, which used to be 18X, and the cost. So go ahead and talk it over with your groups how that would change this equation. So P of X starts off with your revenue, which now instead of 18x would be 19x. And we subtract from it our costs, which is now $5.25 per slipper. Don't forget your 30,000. When we distribute that negative, I have 19x minus $5.25 times x, and now minus 30,000. So if I subtract 19x minus $5.25, we get $13.75 for every slipper, which is actually a little more than they earned per slipper originally. And there's your new profit statement. And make sure that does say minus 30,000. Last problem for today, we have Bernice's monthly paycheck, which can be represented by P of D equals 210D plus 1100. And she also earns babysitting money of B of D equals 36D plus 100. D represents the number of weekdays, and they want to know which function would represent her total monthly income. Again, work on this problem. You might want to start individually and then compare your answers with your group members to see how you're doing. Well, we know it says total, which means we're going to be adding them together. So we have 210D plus 1100 plus her babysitting money, which she does on the side after she gets done with her normal job. So now we have this pair of like terms, the D's. 210D plus 36D is 246D. Combine my 1100 and my 100 together, turns that into 1200. So there's her total for the weekdays. So looking at our choices, that means the correct answer choice should be A. Congrats if you got that correct.